My dearest, you need to run from them urgently. Go to our son's house late tonight, and you will understand everything. My husband's voice sounded so real, so near, that when I opened my eyes in the dark bedroom, I reached out for him in the empty space beside me. But I only found cold sheets. It had been 3 years since Robert passed away, and yet his voice that night was as clear as if he were sitting next to me, whispering in my ear, with that urgency he only used when something truly bad was about to happen. I stayed there, my heart pounding hard against my ribs, staring at the ceiling where the shadows of the early morning drew strange shapes. The digital clock on the nightstand showed 4:22 a.m. Luke Fornzo 92 foot sang. Dawn was barely 2 hours away, and my 70th birthday was less than 24 hours away. 70 years old. A whole life built on hard work, sacrifice, and love. And now this. A dream that did not feel like a dream, but a warning. I got out of bed with my legs shaking, not from age, but from the fear running down my spine. I put my robe on over my nightgown and walked to the window. The streets of my suburban neighborhood were completely empty, lit only by the street lamps that flickered with that electric hum you hear only in the deep silence of the night. I thought about ignoring it. I thought maybe it was just a dream caused by the anxiety of turning 70, by the loneliness of this big house that was once full of laughter and now only held echoes. But Robert's voice would not leave me alone. Go to our son's house. Those specific words. He had not told me to be careful. He had not told me to pray. He had ordered me to go. And Robert never gave orders without a reason. I got dressed in silence, choosing comfortable, dark clothes as if I knew what I was about to do required discretion. Black pants, grey sweater, flats. I grabbed my car keys and my purse, checking that my cell phone was charged. Before leaving, I stopped in front of the small display I kept in the living room, where Robert's photo looked at me with those brown eyes that had always known how to read me better than anyone. I touched his face in the photograph. If this is real, give me strength, I whispered, and stepped out into the pre-dawn darkness. The drive to Andrew's house usually took 30 minutes, but at this hour, with the streets deserted, I arrived in 20. My son lived in a quiet subdivision, in a 2-story house that I myself had helped pay for when he and Marlene got married 12 years ago. A nice house, with a front yard and a wrought iron gate that he always kept locked. But this morning, when I arrived and turned off the engine half a block away, I noticed the gate was open, and there was a light on in the living room. At 4:30 a.m., Luke 4, Geo 30 foot sang. I got out of the car without a sound, closing the door carefully. The cold morning air hit my face and made me more aware of what I was doing. A 70-year-old woman, alone, spying on her own son's house because a dream had told her to. It sounded absurd. It sounded like the beginning of a story my friends would tell while shaking their heads with pity. But I kept walking. I approached the side of the house, where the stone wall cast enough shadows to hide me. From there, I could partially see the living room through the large window. And what I saw froze my blood. Andrew was sitting on the sofa, leaning over the coffee table where papers were scattered. Lots of papers. Marlene was standing next to him, pointing at something on one of the documents. And there was another person. A man I did not immediately recognize, younger than my son, with an open laptop in front of him. The three were talking in low voices, but with intense, urgent gestures. I moved a little closer, my heart hammering so hard I feared they might hear it. I flattened my body against the wall and peered in just enough to see better. It was then that I recognized some of those papers on the table. The unmistakable manila color of legal folders, the notary's letterhead. And on top of everything, Standing out like a dark stain on white paper, I saw my own signature, or something that looked very much like my signature. Andrew picked up one of the documents and held it up to the light, examining it carefully. Marlene said something and laughed. A low, satisfied laugh. The kind of laugh you give when something you planned is going exactly the way you wanted. The unknown man typed something on the laptop and turned the screen toward them. The three leaned in to look, and on their faces I saw the same expression. Triumph. I backed away from the wall, pressing my hand over my mouth to keep any sound from escaping. My legs were shaking so much that I had to lean against the wall to keep from falling. I felt the ground moving under my feet, as if the earth itself were rejecting me, refusing to hold me as I processed what I had just seen. My son. My only son. The boy I had carried in my arms, who I had fed, educated, protected. The man to whom I had given everything I had, and more. He was in there, in the middle of the night, surrounded by documents with my signature, laughing. I walked back to my car as if in a trance, without looking back, praying that no one would come out of the house and see me. I got in the car, closed the door, and just sat there, gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. My breathing came out in short, quick gasps. I felt as if I were drowning. I started the engine and drove back home without thinking, functioning on autopilot. I do not remember the drive. I only remember pulling into my driveway, parking the car, and sitting there as the sunrise began to paint the sky in shades of violet and rose. A new day, the day before my 70th birthday. But before I can tell you what happened next, I need you to understand how I reached that moment. Because what I saw that morning at Andrew's house was not the beginning. It was merely the moment when all the pieces finally clicked into place before my eyes. For you to understand the magnitude of what I discovered, I have to take you with me into the past, to the months before, to all those little moments I ignored, that I justified, that I let pass, thinking I was being paranoid or exaggerating. I have to tell you how a 70-year-old, independent, and proud woman ended up spying on her own son in the middle of the night because a dream had warned her. And more importantly, I have to show you how I did not see what was happening right under my nose. My life after Robert's death had become a carefully constructed routine. It was not the life I had dreamed of for my 70s, but it was mine, and that meant something. I woke up every day at 6 in the morning, made coffee in the coffee maker Robert had given me for our last anniversary, and sat on the small back porch to watch the sun light up the garden he had planted with so much love. The bougainvillea continued to bloom, oblivious to his absence. I lived alone in the house where we had raised Andrew, a 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood, with a front yard that I maintained myself because I refused to hire a gardener. As long as I can do it myself, I will, I told my neighbor Irene every time she offered me the contact for her nephew who did yard work. It was not pride. It was necessity. The need to feel that I was still useful, that I still had a purpose beyond waiting for visits that were becoming less and less frequent. I had built a decent life in those 3 years of widowhood. My friends from the church group invited me to their Wednesday breakfasts. I played bingo on Fridays at Irene's house. On Saturdays, I went to the farmer's market early, when the vegetables were freshest and the vendors were friendliest. On Sundays, I attended 8 o'clock a.m., Luke 8:00 foot sang, Mass, always sitting in the same pew on the left side, and afterward, I stopped for some pastry to go with my afternoon coffee. It was a predictable, simple existence. Some might call it boring. But for me, it was stability. And stability was the only thing keeping me afloat after losing the man with whom I had shared 42 years of marriage. Robert had been my partner in everything. We met when I was 25 and worked as a secretary in an accounting firm. He was one of the junior accountants, serious and quiet, with those eyes that seemed to see beyond the numbers and spreadsheets. He won me over with patience, with small gestures, with a constancy that never failed during all the years we were together. We were not rich, but we never went without. He worked, I worked until Andrew was born, and then I devoted myself to the house and raising our son. Andrew had been our only joy and, for many years, also our only concern. As a child, he was restless, demanding, always needing something more. Robert used to say that was good, that it meant our son had ambition. I was not so sure, but I kept my doubts to myself because what mother wants to think badly of her own child? When Andrew turned 30 and met Marlene, I thought he had finally matured. Marlene was an attractive woman, educated, with good manners and an easy smile. She came from a large family in another state and had come to the city for work. She claimed to be an accountant, just as Robert had been. That pleased me. I felt it was a sign, a connection to my deceased husband, even though Robert had already passed away by the time Andrew and Marlene became a couple. They got married 6 months after meeting, a simple but lovely wedding at the event venue we used to go to for family parties. I paid for half of everything because Andrew explained that they were saving for the down payment on a house. "Mum, if you help me with the wedding, we can use our savings for the house. It's an investment in our future." That is how he sold it to me. And I, who had always dreamed of seeing my son established, with his own family, accepted without a second thought. Then came the house. A beautiful property in a better neighborhood than ours, with 2 stories and a yard that Marlene swore she would turn into her personal project. They needed help with the down payment. I had some savings that Robert and I had put aside for years, planning to use them to travel when we retired. But Robert was no longer here, and the trips no longer made sense without him. So when Andrew asked me to lend him $20,000, I gave it to him. "I'll pay you back in 2 years, Mum, with interest and everything." I never saw a single penny back, but I did not care, or at least, that is what I told myself, because Andrew was my son, the only immediate family I had left, and if I could not help my own son, then what had I worked for my whole life? What had I saved for? Money without family meant nothing. During the first year after the wedding, Andrew and Marlene visited me often, every 2 weeks. Sometimes every week. Marlene brought desserts bought at that expensive downtown bakery, and Andrew sat with me and told me about his job at the logistics company, where he had gotten a supervisor position. Everything seemed to be going well. I was happy to be the mother-in-law who prepared big meals, who had a clean house ready to welcome them, who listened to their plans and dreams. But after that first year, the visits began to space out. First, it was once a month. Then, every 2 months. They always had reasonable excuses. Andrew's job was very demanding. Marlene was taking a specialization course. They had social commitments. They were remodeling a bathroom. I nodded, smiled, and said of course I understood. Children have their own lives. It is natural. It is healthy. But the nights grew longer, and the house felt emptier. Irene, my neighbor and friend of 15 years, was the only one who dared to tell me the truths I did not want to hear. "Theodora, that boy has abandoned you. When he needed you for the house, he was here every week. Now that he has what he wanted, he does not even remember you." I defended him. "Do not say that, Irene. Andrew is busy. He has his life. I cannot expect him to dedicate all his time to me." She shook her head, but did not insist. Irene knew that some truths you have to discover alone. The truth was, I felt lonely, deeply lonely. Not the kind of loneliness that is cured with occasional company or phone calls. It was a loneliness that weighed on my chest when I woke up, that accompanied me during the day while I cleaned rooms no one else used, that sat with me at the table while I ate alone in front of the TV. I missed Robert with an intensity that did not diminish with time. I missed his quiet presence, the way he read the newspaper in the mornings, how he whistled softly while he shaved. I missed having someone to share the small moments of the day with, someone to ask how I had slept, to notice if I looked tired, to genuinely care. And in the midst of that loneliness, Andrew and Marlene were my only lifeline, my only connection to something that resembled a family. That is why, when they finally appeared, I welcomed them with open arms, without reproaches, without awkward questions. I prepared their favorite meals, baked the triple-layer cake that Andrew had loved since he was a child, and listened to their stories with genuine attention. I never told them how much their absences hurt. I never confessed that I counted the days between visits. I never admitted that sometimes I stayed awake at night, wondering if I had done something wrong, if I had been a bad mother, if that was why my son seemed not to need me anymore. Robert used to tell me something that now resonated in my head like a prophecy. Theodora, you always see the best in people. It is a beautiful thing about you, but it also makes you vulnerable. Not everyone deserves your trust, even if they share your last name. He said it with affection, never with harshness, but it always left me thinking. What was he referring to? Was he talking about Andrew? I never wanted to delve deeper into that conversation. Everything changed one afternoon in August, 3 months before my 70th birthday. I was watering the plants in the garden when I heard the doorbell. I was not expecting anyone. Irene was out of town, visiting her sister, and my church friends only came on Wednesdays. When I opened the door, I found Andrew standing there with a smile I had not seen in months. A wide, genuine smile, like the one he had when he was a child and had gotten good grades. "Mom, how about I take you out to lunch? We haven't spent time together, just you and me, in a long time." It caught me by surprise. I had not seen him in almost 2 months, and suddenly he showed up unannounced, wanting to take me out to eat. I should have asked questions. I should have been suspicious. But instead, I felt a wave of happiness so intense that it made me dizzy. My son was seeking me out. My son wanted to spend time with me. "Of course, dear. Give me 5 minutes to change." I rushed to my room like an excited teenager, put on the floral dress I saved for special occasions, and a little lipstick. When I came out, Andrew was still in the living room, looking at the pictures on the mantelpiece. Photos of him as a child, of his graduation, of his wedding, photos of Robert and me in our younger years. He took me to an Italian restaurant downtown, one of those places with white tablecloths and candles on the tables. Too elegant for a casual lunch between a mother and son, but I did not say anything. I thought maybe he had gotten a raise, that he was celebrating something. We ordered pasta and wine, although I only had half a glass, because alcohol makes me dizzy. Andrew talked non-stop during the meal. He told me about a new project at work, about how Marlene had landed an important client, about their plans to remodel the kitchen. I listened, happy to have him there, happy that he was telling me about his life. But something about his manner of speaking unsettled me, though I could not pinpoint exactly what it was. There was a hidden urgency in his words, as if he were building something, preparing the ground for something bigger. And then, between the main courses and dessert, he dropped the question he had come to ask. "Mum, have you ever thought about what would happen if you got sick? Or if you had an accident?" He said it in a casual tone, like commenting on the weather, but his eyes studied me with an intensity that gave me goosebumps. "Well, I guess I would go to the hospital, dear. That is what I have medical insurance for." I tried to sound light, but my voice came out tense. I am not talking about that. I am talking about more serious things. Dad died so quickly, so unexpectedly. One day he was fine, and the next he was gone. Have you thought about getting your affairs in order? You know, documents, a will, those kinds of things. He leaned forward, taking my hand across the table. I do not want to scare you, Mum, but you are 70 years old. It is responsible to have everything prepared. 69, almost 70, but I did not correct him. In his head, I had already crossed that invisible line that separates those who are still in control from those who need others to make decisions for them. I have my will, Andrew. I made it years ago with the notary your father recommended to us. Everything is in order. It was not entirely true. The will I had was old, from when Robert was still alive. I knew I should update it, but I had procrastinated because thinking about those things depressed me. That is good, Mum. Very good. He squeezed my hand. But there are other things. For example, who has access to your bank accounts if something happens to you? Who can make medical decisions for you if you are unconscious? These things are important. I do not know, Andrew. I have never thought about that. And it was true. I had lived all those years with Robert, and after his death, I had continued living day to day without really thinking about my own mortality. You should add someone to your accounts, as a co-signer. I could do it if you want. That way, if you need help with something, or if there is an emergency, I can handle it for you. It is just a precaution, Mum. A safety net. He said it so naturally, with such apparent logic, that I almost nodded right there. But something stopped me. A small voice in the back of my mind, which sounded suspiciously like Robert's voice. Do not make important decisions without thinking them through, Theodora. Sleep on important things. Let me think about it, dear. These are serious matters. I need time to consider it. I tried to sound grateful, not suspicious. I did not want him to think I did not trust him. Although a small part of me, a part that I still did not want to acknowledge, was already beginning to doubt. Andrew did not insist further that day. He paid the bill, drove me back home, and kissed me on the forehead before leaving. Think about it, Mum. I just want to take care of you, like you have always taken care of me. And he left, leaving me at the door with a feeling of unease that I could not shake. I could not sleep well that night. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, thinking about the conversation. Why now? Why was Andrew suddenly so worried about my financial and legal affairs? For 2 years, he had been practically absent, and now he showed up wanting to be a co-signer on my bank accounts. But then I scolded myself for being suspicious. He was my son, my only son. Maybe he really was worried. Maybe he had seen something on the news about elderly people having problems because they had not prepared their affairs. Maybe it was genuine love, not manipulation. I wanted to believe it. I needed to believe it. The following weeks were strange. Andrew started visiting me more often, once a week, sometimes twice. Always with Marlene, always kind, always attentive. They brought me food, helped me with small things around the house, and stayed for coffee. And on every visit, in one way or another, the topic of my documents, my accounts, my future security came up in the conversation. Mum, have you thought about what we talked about? Andrew would ask me while Marlene washed the dishes I had used to serve them pie. I am still considering it, dear. Do not think of it as distrust, Theodora, Marlene would interject with her sweet voice, drying her hands on the kitchen towel. Think of it as love. Andrew just wants to make sure you are protected, that you are not alone if something happens. She always called me Theodora, never mum or mother-in-law. That bothered me, though I never told her. They brought me brochures from a bank about joint accounts. They showed me articles online about elderly people who had legal problems because they did not have updated powers of attorney. They told me the story of one of their neighbours, an 80-year-old woman who had a stroke, and no one could access her money to pay for the hospital because she had not prepared anything. Slowly, they built a case. They sowed fear. Fear of being left alone and defenseless, fear of being a burden, fear of not being prepared. And I, alone in that big house, with my 70th birthday approaching, began to believe that maybe they were right. Maybe it was irresponsible not to have anyone else on my accounts. Maybe it was selfish not to give my son access to information he would need if I died suddenly, as Robert had. Irene returned from her trip in mid-September. I saw her pruning her rose bushes one afternoon and went out to greet her. I told her, with a pride that now embarrasses me to recall, that Andrew was visiting me more often, that he was worried about me, that he wanted to help me organize my affairs. Irene put down her pruning shears and looked me directly in the eyes. "Theodora, why now? Why suddenly so much interest?" Her tone was not accusatory. It was genuinely concerned. "Because he loves me, Irene. Because he is maturing and realizes that I am not going to live forever." "Oh, because he wants something." She said the words I did not dare to think. "Be careful, my friend. Children who disappear for years and suddenly return with so much interest in papers and banks do not always come back for the right reasons." I was offended, profoundly offended. "It is not fair for you to say that about Andrew. He is my son. He has known me since he was born. He would never hurt me." Irene raised her hands in a sign of peace. "You are right, Theodora. Forgive me. I should not have said that. He is your son, and you know him better than anyone." But her eyes told me something else. They told me not to get carried away by emotion. They told me to be careful. I did not listen to her. I returned to my house feeling misunderstood, convinced that Irene simply did not understand what it was like to have a son who cared about his mother. That same week, Andrew arrived with a manila envelope full of documents. "Mum, I spoke with a lawyer friend of mine. He helped me prepare some basic papers. You just need to sign them and take them to the notary to have them certified. It is simple. It will take you 10 minutes. He spread them out on the dining room table with a reassuring smile. I sat down to review the papers. They were legal documents, full of words I did not fully understand. Power of attorney, revocable trust, joint tenancy with right of survivorship. The fine print blurred in front of my eyes. I had never been good with legal documents. I had always depended on Robert for those things. "It is a lot, Andrew. I do not really understand what all this means." I tried to sound calm, but I felt a pressure in my chest that made it difficult to breathe. "That is why I am here, Mum, to explain it to you." He sat next to me, pointing to each document. "This one is so I can manage your bank accounts if you cannot do it. This other one is so I can make medical decisions for you if you are unconscious. And this one here is just to add my name to the savings account, just in case." He spoke with the same patience he used when explaining math to me when I was a child, as if I were the child now. "What if I only want you to have access when I cannot manage it? Is there not an option like that?" I asked, feeling like I was being difficult, but unable to help it. "These documents work this way, Mum. When you sign them, you give me complete authorization. But I would never do anything without consulting you first. You are my mother. This is just out of precaution, in case something happens like what happened to Dad. Can you imagine if you have a heart attack tomorrow, and I cannot even pay for your funeral because I do not have access to your accounts?" His voice cracked a little at the end, as if he were truly distressed by that possibility. And I, who had spent 3 years fearing dying alone and being buried without anyone caring, felt my resistance crumble. Maybe Andrew was right. Maybe it was better to be prepared. Maybe this was what responsible families did. Give me a few days to think about it, dear. It is a lot all at once. This time, I saw a flicker of frustration in his eyes. Just a second, so fast that afterward, I doubted if I had really seen it. Sure, Mum. Take your time. But not too long, okay? The sooner we do this, the sooner you will be protected. He put the documents back in the envelope and left it on the table. I will leave it here for you to look over calmly. Call me if you have any questions. After he left, I sat in front of that manila envelope, as if it were a bomb. Something about all of this did not feel right, but I could not identify exactly what it was. Was it real intuition, or was it just the fear of an old woman losing control of her own life? I called my cousin Lucy that night. She lived in another state, but we had always been close. I told her about the documents, about Andrew's visits, about my confusion. I expected her to tell me that I was being paranoid, that it was normal for children to worry about these issues. But Lucy was silent for a long time after I finished talking. Theodora, have you checked your bank statements lately? My bank statements? Yes, I check them every month when they arrive. Why? And everything is normal? No strange activity? Her tone was cautious, as if she were treading on dangerous ground. Everything is normal, Lucy. I do not understand what you are getting at. I'm just saying that if someone asked me for those papers with so much insistence, I would check my accounts very carefully, and I would not sign anything without another lawyer, not that person's friend, reviewing the documents. She paused. Forgive me if I offend you, but has Andrew asked you for money lately? Not since the house thing, and that was years ago. In fact, he comes more often now and never asks me for anything. He just wants to help me. I said the words with conviction, but they sounded false even to me. Exactly. Theodora, he comes more often now and does not ask you for money. Does that not seem strange to you? Before, he came every 2 months and always needed something. Now he comes every week and only wants you to sign papers. Think about it. Lucy sighed on the other end of the line. Look, maybe I am being unfair. Maybe Andrew really just wants to take care of you. But promise me you will not sign anything without someone else reviewing it, someone neutral. I promised her. But after hanging up, I felt worse. Now I had Irene's doubts and Lucy's doubts resonating in my head, mixing with my own insecurities. Was I being ungrateful? Was I rejecting my son's genuine love because other people were putting ideas into my mind? That night, I pulled out all my bank statements from the last 6 months. I spread them out on the dining room table and reviewed them line by line. Deposits from my pension, withdrawals for household expenses, utility payments, everything normal, everything exactly as it should be. I felt ridiculous for having doubted. But then I remembered something. About 2 months ago, Andrew had asked me for the exact address of my bank and my account number to make a surprise transfer for Mother's Day, which he had missed. No transfer ever arrived. At the time, I did not question it because I thought he had forgotten or had problems. But now, looking at my statements, that request took on a different meaning. Why did he need my account number if he never made a transfer? I started noticing other things. Small details that I had ignored because it was easier to ignore them than to confront them. Like the time I found Marlene going through the papers on my bedroom desk when she was supposedly in the bathroom. "Oh, sorry, Theodora. I confused the door," she had said with a laugh. Or when Andrew asked me very casually how much money I had in my savings account. "Just curiosity, Mum, to know you are financially well." And there was also the time, a month ago, when I arrived home early from church because I had a headache and found Andrew in my house. He had a key because I had given it to him for emergencies. He was sitting at Robert's desk, with my box of important documents open in front of him. "Mum, you scared me. I came to drop off this you asked me for." He pointed to a grocery bag on the table. But I had not asked him for anything from the grocery store. At the time, I let it go. I thought maybe I had forgotten to ask him. My memory was not what it used to be. But now, connecting all those moments, they formed a pattern that I did not like at all. I decided to do something I had never done. I called the bank the next day and asked for information about my account. I wanted to know if anyone had tried to access it, or if there had been unusual inquiries. The bank employee asked me several security questions and then told me that everything was fine, that there was no strange activity. But she added something that froze my blood. "Mrs. Hayes, I see here that 3 weeks ago, you came to one of our branches to ask about adding a co-signer to your account. You decided to go ahead with it." I never went to the bank to ask about that. There was an awkward silence on the other end of the line. "Mrs. Hayes, the system here says that you came accompanied by your son. He asked the questions." The account executive explained the process to her. The employee's voice sounded confused, as if she were checking the information again. "I never went to that branch, not in the last few weeks." My voice trembled. I felt the floor moving beneath my feet. "I understand. Well, in that case, I must report this as an irregularity. Can you come to the bank today? We need to verify your identity and review exactly what happened." The employee's professional tone now had a hint of alarm. I hung up the phone and sat in the living room, staring at the wall without really seeing it. Had Andrew gone to the bank pretending to be me, or accompanying someone who was pretending to be me? How was it possible? How had it come to this point? I went to the bank that same afternoon. The account executive received me in a private office. She was a young woman, about 30 years old, with glasses and a serious expression. "Mrs. Hayes, I need you to watch this security video." She turned her computer toward me. On the screen, I saw Andrew entering the bank. But he was not alone. He was with a dark-haired woman, about my height, wearing large sunglasses and a scarf on her head. The woman kept her head down, letting Andrew speak for her. Although the video quality was not perfect, I could see enough. It was not me. It was someone else pretending to be me. "Who is that woman?" I asked, although a part of me already knew. "According to our records, your son introduced her as you, Theodora Hayes. She did not speak much. She just nodded when asked questions. Your son said you had throat problems, and that is why he would ask the questions." The executive paused the video. "Mrs. Hayes, this is very serious. It is identity theft. We could involve the authorities." "No." The word came out before I could think it. "Not yet. I need to understand what is happening. I need to talk to my son first." The executive looked at me with a mixture of compassion and concern. "Mum, as a precaution, I am going to put an alert on all your accounts. No one will be able to make changes without you coming in person and presenting official identification. I also recommend that you change all your passwords and review your documents at home very carefully. If your son has access to your personal information, he might try other methods." I left the bank feeling as if I had been punched in the stomach. I drove home on autopilot, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. My son. My only son. He had tried to commit fraud using my identity. He had taken someone to the bank to impersonate me. Who was that woman? Marlene? It did not seem to be her because of the height, but with the glasses and the scarf, it was hard to tell. Someone else? How many people were involved in this? When I got home, Irene was in her garden. She saw me get out of the car and must have noticed something in my face, because she stopped what she was doing and crossed over to my driveway. "Theodora, what happened? You are pale." And then I broke down. I told her everything. The documents, the visit to the bank, the security video, the woman who had impersonated me. Irene hugged me while I cried on her shoulder as I had not cried since Robert's funeral. "You have to confront him," she said when I finally calmed down. "You have to talk to Andrew and ask him directly what is going on. What if there is an explanation? What if I am misinterpreting everything?" Even amid the evidence, a part of me clung to the hope that this was a terrible misunderstanding. "Theodora, look at me." Irene took me by the shoulders. "A mother does not want to believe that her son could hurt her. It is natural. But the facts are there. He tried to have someone impersonate you at the bank. That is not a misunderstanding. That is intentional, and it is criminal." She was right. But confronting that truth meant accepting that the son I had raised, whom I had loved unconditionally, was capable of betraying me in the cruelest way. It meant accepting that I was alone in the world in a way I had never imagined. I could not eat dinner that night. I sat in the living room with the lights off, looking at the pictures of Andrew on the mantelpiece. Baby Andrew in my arms. Andrew at 5 years old on his first day of school. Andrew graduating from college, with Robert and me on each side, all of us smiling. At what point had that child turned into someone capable of this? I heard my cell phone ring. It was Andrew. "Mum, have you thought about the documents? We can go to the notary tomorrow if you want. I will pick you up early." I took a deep breath before answering. "Andrew, I need to talk to you. Can you come over tomorrow? Just you, without Marlene?" "Sure, Mum. Is something wrong? You sound strange. We will talk tomorrow." I hung up before he could say anything else. I did not sleep that night. I stayed awake, planning what I would say to him, how I would confront him. A part of me still hoped he would come up with a reasonable explanation, that this was all an absurd misunderstanding that we could resolve with a conversation. But another part, the part that had seen the video, knew that I was about to lose my son. One way or another, after tomorrow, nothing would be the same. Andrew arrived at 10 in the morning. He came alone, as I had asked. He looked tired, with deep circles under his eyes. He sat on the sofa and looked at me expectantly. "What did you want to talk about, Mum?" I took out my cell phone and showed him a photo from the security video that the bank executive had emailed me. The photo where Andrew was clearly visible, with the woman wearing the scarf and dark glasses. "Do you want to explain what this is?" I watched his face go through several expressions in a matter of seconds. Surprise, fear, and then, to my horror, anger. "Are you spying on me, Mum? You went to the bank to investigate me." "Investigate you? Andrew, you took someone to the bank to impersonate me. That is a crime. That is fraud." My voice came out louder than I expected. All the sadness of the previous night was turning into fury. "It is not what it looks like. I can explain it." He got up from the sofa, pacing back and forth. "Look, yes, I went to the bank, but it was only to ask for information. I wanted to know what process we needed to follow for the documents. The woman who was with me was a co-worker who was helping me understand the process. We never said she was you." "The bank's system says otherwise. It says you introduced her as Theodora Hayes. It says she nodded when they asked if she was me." I crossed my arms, waiting, giving him one last chance to tell the truth. The employee must have misinterpreted. I said I was acting on behalf of Theodora Hayes, not that she was Theodora Hayes. It is a misunderstanding, Mum. But he was not looking me in the eyes as he spoke. He was looking at the window, at the door, anywhere but at me. And why was that woman wearing dark glasses and a scarf, as if she were hiding? Why did she not speak at all? Why did you not tell me you were going to the bank? Andrew stopped in the middle of the living room, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. And then I saw something in his face that I had never seen before. A hardness, a coldness that made me instinctively recoil in my chair. Do you know what your problem is, Mum? That you do not trust me. After everything I have done for you, all the times I have come to visit you, worrying about your future, you prefer to believe strangers at the bank rather than your own son. His voice rose in volume. You have always been like this, always doubting, always questioning. Dad was right when he said you were too suspicious. Your father never said that. The words came out as a whisper. Robert had said the exact opposite, that I trusted too much, that I was too naive. Whatever. The point is, I am trying to help you and you treat me like a criminal. You know what? Forget it. Forget the documents. Forget everything. When something happens to you and there is no one who can handle your affairs, you will remember this conversation. He walked toward the door. Andrew, wait. I got up, feeling everything crumbling. Do not leave like this. I need to understand what is happening. He turned back to me. What is happening is that I am a worried son, and you are a paranoid mother. That is what is happening. And he left, slamming the door shut with a sound that made the walls tremble. I stood in the middle of the living room, shaking. I had gone into that confrontation hoping for answers, hoping maybe that Andrew would confess and we could resolve things. Instead, I had received pure gaslighting. He had made me feel like I was the crazy one, like I was the one who was wrong for daring to question his actions. And the worst part was that a part of me, that part that was still the mother who had raised him, wanted to believe him. I wanted to think that maybe it had been a misunderstanding, that maybe I was exaggerating. I called Irene. I needed to talk to someone before I went crazy. She listened in silence as I told her about the confrontation, about how Andrew had reacted, about his accusations. That is classic manipulation, Theodora. He is flipping the blame onto you. He is the one who did something wrong, but he is making you feel like you are the problem for finding out. Irene sighed. Listen to me closely. You need to protect yourself. You can no longer think like a mother. You have to think like someone who is being attacked. He is my son, Irene. I know, honey, I know. And that makes all this 1,000 times more painful. But you have to protect yourself anyway. The following days were strange. Andrew did not call. He did not come to visit me. It was as if he had disappeared from my life again. Part of me felt relieved. Another part felt devastated. I checked my cell phone every hour waiting for a message, a call, something to indicate that he still cared even a little. It was Irene who suggested I look for more information. If Andrew tried to do something at the bank, he probably has tried other things. You need to review everything, every document, every account, every paper you have in this house. I spent 3 days searching my house from top to bottom. I opened every drawer, every filing cabinet, every box stored in the closet, and I found things. Small thing that alone meant nothing, but together painted a terrifying picture. Documents were missing. Not many, but enough to note it. A copy of my birth certificate that I always kept in the desk drawer. The deed to the house that Robert had left in my name. An old bank statement from my savings account. Things that someone would need if they wanted to do what? Impersonate me? Sell my house without my permission? And then I found something that paralyzed me. In the back of a drawer I rarely opened, Beneath old tablecloths I did not use, there was an envelope I did not recognize. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside were copies of my documents, my official ID, my social security card, my birth certificate. But they were not the copies I kept. They were new, recent copies with a print quality that did not match my old printer. Someone had been making copies of my documents and storing them in my own house. Why? To have easy access whenever they needed them. To prevent me from suspecting when documents went missing from where I actually kept them. That same afternoon, while I was putting everything back, the doorbell rang. It was Marlene. Alone. She had never come alone before. She always came with Andrew. "Theodora, can we talk?" Her voice was sweet as always, but there was something in her eyes that put me on alert. "Come in." I let her pass, but I did not close the door completely. I did not know why, but my instinct told me to keep an escape route open. She sat on the sofa without being invited. "Andrew told me about your argument. He is very hurt, Theodora. He has not slept well in days." She leaned forward, clasping her hands. "I came to see if we can fix this. We are family. We cannot let a misunderstanding separate us." "It was not a misunderstanding, Marlene. Andrew took someone to the bank to impersonate me. What if I told you that person was me?" She dropped it just like that, casually, like commenting on the weather. I gasped. "What?" "It was me at the bank. Andrew asked me to go with him because he wanted information, but he did not know how to ask for it. I was just there for moral support. The employee must have confused things." She smiled, but the smile did not reach her eyes. "See, it has a perfectly reasonable explanation. Why were you wearing dark glasses and a scarf?" "Because I had just come from the hair salon, and I did not like how my hair looked. I did not want anyone to see me like that." She shrugged. "I know it sounds vain, but that is just me." Everything in her explanation sounded rehearsed, as if she had practiced these words in front of a mirror. "And why did Andrew say you were me?" "He did not say that, Theodora. He already explained it to you. He said he was acting on your behalf." The employee misinterpreted. She got up from the sofa and walked toward me. "Look, I know this looks bad. I know you have reasons to distrust. But Andrew just wants to take care of you. We all know that at your age things can get complicated fast. It is better to be prepared." "At my age," I repeated the words with bitterness. "I am 70 years old, Marlene. Not 100. I can still think. I can still decide. I am still the owner of my own life." "No one is saying otherwise." But her tone said something else. Her tone said she thought the exact opposite. "We just want to help." "Well, I do not need your help. And if you try anything like that again, I am going to call the police." The words came out with more bravery than I felt. Something changed on Marlene's face. The mask of sweetness cracked for just a second, but it was enough for me to see what was underneath. Coldness, calculation, something that looked dangerously like contempt. "It would be a shame if you did that, Theodora. A real shame. Andrew is your only son, your only family. Do you really want to destroy that relationship over a misunderstanding?" She moved closer. "Think carefully. At your age, alone in this big house, with no one visiting you, it would be sad to end up completely isolated." It was a threat, disguised as concern, but a threat nonetheless. She was telling me that if I accused them, I would be completely alone. "I think you should leave, Marlene." She stood in front of me for another moment, studying me. Then she nodded slowly. "As you wish. But when you change your mind, and you will, I hope we are still willing to help you." And she left, closing the door softly behind her. I stood there, trembling in the middle of the living room. Marlene's visit had confirmed everything I did not want to admit. This was not a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate plan. And now that I had figured it out, they were scared. Or worse, they were angry. I called Lucy that night. I told her everything from the beginning. The call to the bank, the video, the confrontation with Andrew, Marlene's threatening visit. My cousin listened in silence, and when I finished speaking, she sighed heavily. Theodora, you need professional help. This is no longer something you can handle alone. You need a lawyer. You might even need the police. I cannot, Lucy. He is my son. Your son tried to commit fraud using your identity. Your daughter-in-law just threatened you in your own house. This is not family love, Theodora. This is abuse. Her voice cracked. Please, cousin, do not let motherly love blind you so much that you end up destroyed. I could not sleep that night. I lay awake in the dark, thinking about everything that had happened in the last few months. The patterns were now so clear. Andrew and Marlene had planned this from the beginning. The sudden visits after years of absence, the sudden interest in my documents, the papers they pressured me to sign. Everything had been part of a plan to gain access to my money, my house, everything Robert and I had built over 42 years of marriage. But something still did not fit. How did they know how much money I had? What made them think it was worth all this effort? I lived modestly. My house was nice but not luxurious. I did not drive new cars or wear expensive jewelry. What made them think I had anything worth stealing? And then I remembered. 6 months ago, just before Andrew started visiting me more often, I had mentioned during a phone call that I had just received a payout from a life insurance policy of Robert's, an insurance I did not even know existed, from his old job. It was not a fortune, but it was $120,000, $120,000, that had been deposited into my savings account. I mentioned it casually, excited to share good news with my son. I told him I could finally do some repairs on the house, maybe travel a little, as Robert and I had planned. A week later, Andrew had appeared at my door with that bright smile, inviting me to lunch. Everything fit. They had been waiting, planning the perfect moment to approach me. And I, in my loneliness and my need to feel loved, had made everything easy for them. The next day, I called a lawyer. It was Friday morning, and I had gotten the contact through Irene, who knew the lawyer's wife from her knitting group. Mr. Morales was a man in his 50s, with grey hair and a calm manner of speaking that immediately made me feel less scared. I told him the whole story. He listened without interrupting, taking notes in a yellow notebook. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and looked at me with a mixture of compassion and concern. Mrs. Hayes, what you are describing to me is a classic case of elder financial exploitation. Unfortunately, it is more common than people think, and it is even more painful when the perpetrators are family members. He leaned forward. I need to ask you something important. Did you sign any of those documents your son brought you? No, I did not sign anything. That is good. Very good. He wrote something down in his notebook. Have you noticed any strange activity in your bank accounts? No, everything is normal. The bank put alerts on my accounts after what happened. Excellent. That gives us time. But I need you to know something, Mrs. Hayes. If your son and daughter-in-law have copies of your documents, and from what you tell me, it seems they do, they could try other things. They could try to open accounts in your name, apply for credit. They could even try to sell your house if they have access to your deed. Panic squeezed my chest. Can they do that? Can they sell my house without me knowing? It is difficult, but not impossible. There are corrupt notaries. There are ways to forge signatures. I do not want to scare you, but you need to be prepared. He stood up and took some papers from a filing cabinet. I am going to help you protect yourself. First, we are going to place an alert with the Public Property Registry. That way, if anyone tries to make any move with your house, you will be notified immediately. Second, I will help you review your credit report to make sure they have not opened anything in your name. Third, I am going to give you the contact information for a private investigator. A private investigator? It is necessary. Mrs. Hayes, your son tried to impersonate you at a bank. Your daughter-in-law threatened you in your own house. This is not going to end here. They are not simply going to give up. And we need to know what else they have done, what else they are planning. He paused. We also need solid evidence if this goes to court. I do not want to take my son to court. I understand, but you may not have a choice. Sometimes the only way to protect yourself is to take legal action. His voice was gentle but firm. Think about it. For now, let us get everything prepared so that you are protected. I left the lawyer's office with a folder full of documents and a list of things I had to do. I felt overwhelmed, but also, for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was taking control of the situation. The private investigator's name was Oliver Ruiz. He was a former police officer in his 60s who now worked independently on cases of fraud and deception. We met at a coffee shop near my house the following Monday. He was a serious man of few words, but with a look that seemed to see more than you wanted to show. Mrs. Hayes, I need you to tell me everything again, every detail, no matter how insignificant it seems. He took out a small recorder. Do you mind if I record our conversation? It is for reference, so as not to lose any details. I told him everything again. And as I spoke, Oliver took notes, interrupting me occasionally to ask specific questions. When exactly had Andrew started visiting me more often? Did I remember specific dates? Was there any other family member involved? Did Marlene have any siblings or friends who had appeared on the scene lately? There is something I need to investigate, he said when I finished. The man who appears in the bank video with your son. Did you recognize him? No, I had never seen him. I am going to find out who he is, and I am going to investigate Marlene's past. Sometimes, in these cases, we discover that this is not the first time these people have done this. He looked me directly in the eyes. Prepare yourself, Mrs. Hayes. What I find may not be pleasant. I did not fully understand what he meant until 3 days later, when Oliver called me and asked to see me urgently. We met at the same coffee shop. This time he brought a thick folder that he placed on the table between us. I found something big. He opened the folder and took out several photographs. This is Marlene 5 years ago, living in another state under a different name. She went by Marina Solis. He pushed the photo toward me. The woman in the photo was definitely Marlene, but she looked different. Shorter hair, thinner, but it was her. She was standing next to an older man, both smiling at the camera. That man was named Edward Vargas. He was 75 years old. He was a widower. Marlene, or Marina, became his partner. They lived together for 2 years. Oliver took out more papers. Edward died 3 years ago. Heart attack. And when he died, Marlene inherited everything. The house, the savings, everything. Edward's children tried to contest the will, alleging that their father had been manipulated, but they could not prove anything. By the time they realized what was happening, it was too late. I felt the air rush out of me. Are you saying that Marlene does this professionally? That she seeks out older widowed men to rob them? Not exactly, Oliver replied, taking out more documents. It is worse than that. Marlene does not seek out older men directly. She looks for the children of older people, ambitious children, children with money problems, resentful children, and then she convinces them to work together to exploit their own parents. He showed me a photo of the man who had appeared in the bank video with Andrew. This is Fabricio Ruiz. He is Marlene's brother, or at least that is what she claims. I have investigated, and I am not sure if it is true, but they definitely work together. He also appeared in Edward's case. He helped forge documents. I stared at the photos, feeling my entire world crumble. And Andrew? Did Andrew know all this from the beginning? That is what I still need to confirm. But Mrs. Hayes, your son has been married to this woman for 12 years. Either he knows her perfectly and is an accomplice, or he has been manipulated by her all this time and genuinely believes that what they are doing is right. Oliver closed the folder. There is more. I managed to speak with Edward Vargas's daughter, the one who tried to contest the will. She told me that in the last months of her father's life, Marlene had him completely isolated. She would not let them visit him. She said Edward was tired, that he needed rest. And when he finally died, they discovered that he had signed documents giving her power over everything just weeks before. My God! I covered my mouth with my hands. Are they going to try to kill me? Not necessarily. Not all these cases end like that. But they will try to isolate you more. They will try to make you appear senile to others. They will try to convince people that you can no longer take care of yourself. He leaned forward. Mrs. Hayes, Edward's daughter, gave me a contact. A woman named Antoinette, who was also a victim of Marlene and Fabricio. She lives here, in the city. She wants to talk to you. Why? What could she tell me? Things you need to hear, things that will prepare you for what is coming. Oliver wrote a number on a napkin. Call her, listen to her story, and then decide what you want to do. I called Antoinette that night. She was a woman about 65 years old, with a tired voice that carried the weight of something very heavy. She agreed to meet me the next day at a park near my house. I recognized her immediately when I arrived. She was sitting on a bench, feeding the pigeons, with the face of someone who had cried so much that she had no tears left. When she saw me approach, she stood up and hugged me as if we had known each other all our lives. Theodora, thank you for coming. I know this must be very difficult for you. We sat down together on the bench. Oliver told me about your situation, and I realized that I have to warn you. I have to tell you what happened to me so you can protect yourself. How did they meet you? I asked. Through my nephew. He worked with Fabricio, or so he thought. Fabricio befriended him, gained his trust, and then introduced him to a woman. It was not Marlene. It was another one. I think they have several working with them. My nephew fell in love with her quickly. They got married in less than a year. Antoinette sighed. And then they started visiting me. At first it was nice. I felt accompanied. I had just lost my husband and was alone. They made me feel loved. The story sounded too familiar. Then the suggestions began. That I should put my nephew on my accounts. That I should give him power of attorney. That at my age I should not be managing everything alone. At first, I refused, but they were so persistent, so convincing. They made me feel like it was the right thing to do, that it was what families who loved each other did. Antoinette wiped her eyes, even though there were no tears. And one day I signed. I signed some papers that my nephew brought me. He told me they were to protect me, to make things easier if something happened to me. What happened next? 2 weeks later, I went to the bank and discovered that my nephew had taken $50,000, $50,000, out of my account. When I confronted him, he told me he had invested it for me, that he would give me returns, but the money never came back. Then they started selling my things, jewelry my husband had given me, antique furniture. They said they needed the space, that I had too many things. I was so confused, so manipulated, that I let it happen. And how did you get out of it? It was my sister who saved me. She came to visit me from another country and saw what was happening. She helped me regain control of my accounts. We confronted my nephew and his wife. They became violent. They threatened to sue me for defamation. They said I was senile and making things up. But my sister was not intimidated. She called the police. Antoinette took my hand. Theodora, what I want to tell you is that this is not going to end peacefully. They are not going to accept that you discovered them. They are going to fight. They are going to try to destroy your credibility. They are going to use Andrew against you. They are going to make it seem like you are the bad guy, the mother who does not trust her own son. They are already doing it. I knew. And it is going to get worse. That is why you need to be prepared. You need to have allies. You need evidence. And most importantly, you need to be ready to lose your son. Because if Andrew is as involved in this as I think he is, the only way to save yourself is to cut him out of your life completely. The words hurt like physical blows, but I knew she was right. Did you get your money back? I asked her. Some, not all. But I got my house, my dignity, my life back. My nephew and his wife disappeared after I filed charges. They went to another state. They are probably doing the same thing to someone else right now. Antoinette squeezed my hand. Do not let what happened to me happen to you. Do not wait until you lose everything to act. That night when I returned home, I found something that chilled me to the bone. The front door was open, not forced, but opened with a key. Someone who had a key had entered, and I had only given a key to one person, Andrew. I went in carefully with my cell phone in my hand, ready to call the police if necessary. The house was silent, but when I reached my bedroom, I saw that everything had been searched. The drawers were slightly open. The papers on my desk were disorganized. Someone had been looking for something. And then I saw it. On my bed, perfectly centered, was a manila envelope. Inside were copies of documents. Documents I had never seen before. Powers of attorney with my signature. Changes of beneficiary on my life insurance. A loan application against my house. All with my signature. But I had never signed any of that. The signatures were good. Very good. If I did not know for sure that I had never signed those documents, even I would have believed they were authentic. Someone had practiced my signature enough to be able to forge it perfectly. With trembling hands, I took photos of each document and sent them to Oliver and Mr. Morales. Then I called Irene. Irene, I need you to come over. Now, please. My voice was trembling so much that I could barely speak. I am coming. Irene arrived in 5 minutes. When she saw the documents, her face turned pale. Theodora, this is evidence of a crime. You need to call the police right now. I cannot. If I call the police, Andrew is going to go to jail. He is my son. Irene, I cannot do that. Your son just broke into your house without permission, left forged documents on your bed as a threat, and is probably planning to use those documents to steal everything from you. And you still want to protect him. Irene took me by the shoulders. Theodora, listen to me. That is not your son. Or at least, he is not the son you raised. That man has become someone dangerous. Irene was right. I knew it in my heart. But my heart also refused to accept it. I stayed at Irene's house that night because I was afraid to be alone, afraid that Andrew would return, afraid of what might happen if we met face to face. The next day, Mr. Morales called me early. "Mrs. Hayes, the documents you sent me are forgeries. Very good forgeries, but forgeries nonetheless. The good thing is that none have been presented to any institution yet, but the fact that they left them on your bed is a clear threat. They are telling you that they have the power to do it whenever they want." What do I do? Officially, you should report it to the authorities, but I understand that it is complicated because he is your son, so I'm going to give you another option. Confront Andrew, but not alone. Do it with witnesses. Tell him that you know everything, that you have evidence, that you have a lawyer, and that if he tries anything else, you will not hesitate to take legal action. Sometimes, when these people realize they have been discovered and that the victim is not going to remain silent, they retreat. And if they do not retreat, then you will have no choice but to involve the authorities. That afternoon, I received a call from Andrew. His voice sounded different, more tense, more urgent. "Mum, we need to talk. It is important. Can I come to your house tonight?" "No. If you want to talk, we will meet in a public place, at the downtown coffee shop, at 6 o'clock, and I'm going to bring someone with me." "Who?" "My lawyer." I hung up before he could respond. I arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early with Mr. Morales. We chose a table near the entrance, with good visibility. Oliver was sitting at another table, discreet but present. I had not told Andrew that he would be there too. Andrew arrived on time. He came alone. He looked haggard, with deep circles under his eyes and wrinkled clothes. For a moment, the mother's instinct in me wanted to ask if he was eating well, if he was getting enough sleep. But I forced myself to remain firm. He sat down across from us, looking at Mr. Morales with distrust. "What is this, Mom?" "An ambush." "It is protection. Protection against you and your wife." I took out the copies of the forged documents and placed them on the table. "I found this on my bed after you entered my house without permission. I want you to explain what it means." Andrew looked at the documents. I watched his face go through several expressions. Initial surprise, then calculation, and finally something that resembled resignation. "Someone is trying to frame us. Mum, those are not ours." "You stopped calling me Mum with affection weeks ago, Andrew. Now you sound like the word burns your tongue." My voice was colder than I myself expected. "I know everything. I know about Edward Vargas. I know about Antoinette. I know that Marlena does this professionally. I know that Fabricio is her accomplice. And I know that you decided to join them to steal everything your father and I built." "That is not true." But his voice lacked conviction. Mr. Morales intervened. "Mr. Hayes, we have evidence of everything. Bank videos, testimonies, documents, and now these forgeries that were left in your mother's house as a threat. If this goes to court, you are going to lose. And not only will you lose, you will go to prison." "You are threatening me, Mum." Andrew looked at me, and for the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. "No, I am giving you a chance you do not deserve. A chance to walk away now, to disappear from my life and never return, and I will not press charges. Or you can proceed with your plan, and I will fight with everything I have. And I will win, Andrew, because the truth is on my side." "And that is it? 12 years of being your son means nothing? 70 years of yours erase a whole life. You erased that life when you decided to see me as a source of money instead of as your mother, when you took someone to impersonate me at the bank, when you forged my signature, when you entered my house to intimidate me." I felt tears burning my eyes, but I did not let them fall. The son I raised died a long time ago. I do not know who you are." Andrew was silent for a long time. Then he got up from the table. "You are making a mistake, Mom. A big mistake. You are going to end up alone, with no one. And when that happens, do not come looking for me." "I will not. I promise you." He left without looking back, and I stayed seated there, feeling that I had just lost my son forever, but knowing that it had been the only way to save myself. The following days were strange. I expected Andrew and Marlene to do something, to try to contact me, to escalate the threats, to present the forged documents somewhere. But nothing happened. It was as if they had disappeared. Oliver confirmed a week later that Andrew and Marlene had sold their house quickly, at a loss. Someone had seen them packing a moving truck in the middle of the night. They had gone to another state, probably to look for another victim, another family to destroy. And then, 3 days before my 70th birthday, I had the dream. Robert, as clear as if he were alive, sitting on the edge of our bed, looking at me with that serious expression he used when something important was about to happen. "My dearest, you need to run from them urgently. Go to our son's house late tonight, and you will understand everything." I woke up with my heart pounding hard. The clock showed 4:22 a.m., Luke Chow 4, Jiao 22 Foot Sang. And although a part of me knew that Andrew had already left, that the house would be empty, another part needed to go. I needed to see with my own eyes what he had left behind. I drove to his house in the dark of the early morning. The gate was open, just like in the dream, but there were no lights on. The house was completely dark. I approached carefully and looked through the living room window. The house was empty, completely empty. Not just of people, but of everything. There was no furniture, no pictures on the walls, nothing, as if they had never lived there. And on the living room floor, right where I could see it from the window, there was something. I tried the door. It was unlocked. I walked in carefully, my cell phone lighting my way. I walked over to that object on the living room floor. It was a box, an old shoebox. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside were photos. Photos of other older women. Dozens of them. Women smiling next to Andrew and Marlene, or next to Marlene and other men. Women who had probably gone through the same thing as me. And beneath the photos, there were documents. Powers of attorney, wills, property deeds, all with signatures that were probably forged. And at the bottom of the box, there was a letter, with my name written on it in Andrew's handwriting. "Mum, if you are reading this, it is because Robert brought you here. I always thought those things about the afterlife were nonsense. But maybe I was wrong. I am leaving this box because a part of me, the part that still remembers being your son, wants you to know that you were not the only one. It wants you to know that this was not personal. It is just what I do, what we are." Marlene taught me that there are two kinds of people in the world, those who take and those who are taken. I decided to be one of those who take. Forgive me or do not forgive me, it does not matter. We will not see each other again. Take care, Mum. I stood there in that empty house, holding that letter, and finally let the tears fall. I cried for the son I had lost. I cried for all those women in the photos who had probably gone through the same pain. I cried for Robert, who had tried to warn me even after he was gone. And I cried for myself, for the lost innocence, for the family I would never have again. But when I finished crying, I took the box and left that house. I called Oliver from the car and told him I had more evidence, a lot more evidence. I was not going to press charges against Andrew. That door was closed forever. but I was going to make sure that every one of those women in the photos knew what had happened to them. I was going to make sure that their families had the information they needed to protect them. I drove back home as dawn broke. The sun was slowly rising, painting the sky with colours that Robert always said were proof that God was an artist. And for the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. I had lost my son, but I had saved my life. I had saved my dignity. And maybe, with the evidence I now had, I could help save other people too. My 70th birthday arrived 2 days later. I celebrated it with Irene, with Lucy, who came to visit me, with my friends from church. I blew out the candles on my cake and made a wish. I did not ask for Andrew to come back. I did not ask for things to be different. I asked for strength to move forward. I asked for peace for my broken heart. And I asked that someday, somehow, my son would find his way back to the person I had raised. Months later, I received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a short note, in handwriting I did not recognize. Mum, it was all my fault. It was always my fault. Forgive me. There was no signature. There was no return address. Just those words. I put the note in the drawer where I used to keep Robert's letters. And then I went out to the garden to water the bougainvillea that I had planted for him, and that continued to bloom, oblivious to all the pain, reminding me that life goes on. It always goes on. Some doors, once they close, never open again. And that was Andrew's choice, not mine. I just chose to survive. And that, after everything that had happened, was enough.